Are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? Those were the only words I desperately needed to hear the day I found myself standing atop the Golden Gate Bridge walkway, believing beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had not one other course of action to take but to die by these two hands from lethal emotional pain. I believed I was useless. I felt I had no value. I thought I was worthless. But on all three of those accounts, I was wrong. I had become suicidal. But in order to do this story any justice, like any story, we have to go back, all the way back to the very beginning. The day I was born, August 30th, 1981, in the great city of San Francisco, in the beautiful state of California. I was born to biological parents, Marcia Silvera and Martino Perales. Martino was half Mexican and half Italian, and Marcia was part Jamaican, Black, Arawak Indian, Portuguese, Irish, Scottish, and English. They found each other in the 1970s in San Francisco, and they fell head over heels in love. In that time of them being in love, they had two beautiful baby boys. Me, then named Giovanni, my biological name as I'm adopted, and my brother, Jordash. Marcia and Martino had a couple of things going for them. They had their immeasurable love for one another and that very same love for their two infant boys. But they had no feasible legal income, and they had a great many things going against them. They had to hustle to survive. We lived in a seedy area of San Francisco, barely a box spring for a mattress over a concrete slab floor. The kind of places you paid for by the hour, and if you didn't, you were out. And my birth parents did whatever they had to do, however illegal to pay on that hour by that hour, just to keep a roof over our heads. We often lie there next to dangerous drug paraphernalia, sharp metal objects that we touched could have killed us. We could have easily fallen to the ground below and cracked our heads open when they were out doing or scoring drugs. They would leave us unattended to go do so. It's a very dangerous situation. We developed severe abandonment issues and detachment disorders from reality from very young ages, only a few months old. One fateful day, one seedy motel clerk makes just about his most unseedy decision. He hears our screams and our cries in his mind one too many times and does us the first solid anybody ever would, and he calls the police. And the police come in with Child Protective Services, and they swoop us up and they place us into the system, into foster care. A system in the 1980s that was in shambles. A system that allowed kids to age out to 18 into homelessness without a penny in their pockets. A system that allowed other kids to be abused and neglected by the very foster parents set to protect them. We would bounce around from home to home. And the idea was that me and my brother Jordash would be adopted together. Do you think that's what happened? You're right if you said no. We bounced around from home to home. We both got a vicious strain of bronchitis, and Jordash died. I bounced around to 4 more homes, landing in the home of Peter and Deborah Muller. Peter was in the Army, often having to be restationed, and Debbie was a housewife. And they were a transitional home for kids of all ages, boys and girls, and they would house these kids until a foster parent would come by and see who they were going to take home to adopt. And one fateful and wonderful day, a lovely young woman named Deborah Joan Hines walked in their door. Debbie walked in their door, but she wasn't looking for a little boy to take home, not by a long shot. She was looking for a little girl to be the sister of Elizabeth Catherine, the girl she and Patrick Kevin Hines had already taken in. They wanted to give Elizabeth a sister. Do I look like a sister to you? Well, the first thing Debbie Hines saw before her on the carpeted floor was then red-headed, wavy-haired Giovanni with my famous red rubber ducky overalls. And she said in her journal of those days, which is how I know this story, that was the moment she fell in love. And she went back to Pat Hines, and he said, let's do this. Let's take him in. Why? Because he needs us. And I desperately needed them. and they took me in at 9 months of age. But there was a problem. I was violently ill all day, every day. Sick as a dog. Doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist. No doctor could come up with what was wrong with their new-to-be son. Until one specialist came forward and said, Patrick and Deborah, there's nothing physically wrong with this child. It's all emotional. But that actually wasn't entirely the truth. You see, my gut to brain health was very poor, and a bruise from the top of my sternum to the bottom of my abdomen from being malnourished. You see, when I was with my birth parents, they fed me and my brother Jordash what they could steal. Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk was our first diet for months at a time. Your gut biomes are connected to your brain chemistry, and I was so ill physically, I was so ill mentally at 9 months of age. And when I got to the Hines home, I was sick for the first 30 days. On the 30th day of being in the Hines home, Debbie Hines, my new mom, came into my room, into my crib, leaned in and said, Gio, you're safe. We're not going anywhere. If you don't knock this off, we're going to have to give you back, which is a complete contradiction. But it was as if my infant mind had fully heard and understood her words, for that was the first night both of us slept soundly in 30 days. And the next day, she came into my crib, and she says, I looked up at her, and I smiled. And one thing became crystally clear to Deborah Joan Hines. I was home, and I was a Hines. Growing up in the Hines home was a beautiful thing. We had toys every Christmas, Easter baskets every Easter. We were a Roman Catholic family. The extended family loved us dearly. You see, Pat and Debbie Hines didn't stop with me. They didn't even start with me, actually. They took in 3 kids from 3 separate families into one, making a melting pot of a family. Elizabeth was their first daughter that they took in, Elizabeth Catherine, and her mom lived with multiple personality disorder. I was the second child they took in. Elizabeth was white, I was mixed. My brother was the third child they took in, he was black. And Pat and Debbie are Irish and German. They took in these 3 kids, Debbie and Pat Hines, when they could have had their natural born children. They did this out of pure love. It was amazing what they did. They literally saved our lives. My dad, Patrick, came from hard times. Just like my biological parents, his mom and dad had substance use disorder. And they died of liver cirrhosis, liver failure at very young ages due to alcoholism. I think at 49 and 54 years of age, leaving my father with about $17 in his pocket to make his way in the world. He would go on to become one of the most prominent San Francisco bankers of his time. Debbie Hines, my beautiful mother, she was amazing. The most optimistic woman you could ever imagine. When things went south, she would find a way to turn it around and put a smile on your face. She always had an optimistic edge to everything. She was a 45-year nurse in San Francisco, starting off in the burn unit at the trauma center all those years ago. That's a rough job, and it's an honorable gig. She worked very, very hard. And they raised us very well. They gave us everything we could have ever wanted for and needed for, along with discipline and the notion that hard work comes because nothing good ever came without it. My mom taught me from a very young age to be kind and compassionate to everyone, no matter how they react to me. It's something I'll never forget. She also taught me the power of optimism, which I'm so grateful for because I would need it in the coming years. I thought to myself, growing up in this home, how can anything go sideways from here? I'm going to grow up. I'm going to get into that good school my dad's always talking about. I'm going to get that great job my mom's always speaking of. And I'll be successful because I've been given opportunity. What a gift. But it wouldn't turn out like that. Not at first, at least. You see, at 17 and a half years of age, everything in my life would come crumbling down. My world around me would fall apart at the seams. I would come apart at the seams. I was in high school at Archbishop Reardon, an all-boys Catholic high school. At 17 and a half for me, I was in the theater program. Mr. John Fennell was our theater director. He was a failed actor turned high school thespian director, but he was the best teacher any of us kids would ever have. On that stage, I had been acting erratically prior to. I had been having a hard time at home. I've been having hallucinations, paranoid delusions, manias and depressions, but I didn't know what they were. So I was quiet about it. I kept it to myself. I buried my pain. I silenced my pain because of fear of the discrimination of others and the marginalization of those with mental struggles. On that stage, on the night of the opening night of the play, I was running my lines with my co-actors and actresses, and I had a complete mental breakdown in front of 1,200 people simultaneously. There was 1,200 people in the audience, not one seat was open. Mr. John Fennell was in the back left corner of the theater, in the very last row. He was drinking himself into oblivion because he could never bear to watch his shows sober. And here I was, on that stage, believing that every single one of the 1,200 people in that audience were going to simultaneously rise, rush the stage, and end my life. I thought they were coming. I ran off stage. I ran to the lobby where I was met with by Mr. John Fennell. John meets me in the lobby and he says, "Hines." He always called me Hines. He said, "Hines, can you please finish the performance? It's not even intermission yet. What are you doing?" And I just babbled incoherent nonsense for the next 10 minutes. I couldn't make out 3 words in a row that made sense. John, of course, called my mom. And Debbie Hines came to pick me up. And I'll never forget the look in her eyes as she gazed into mine, because I could see within hers that she saw inside mine the depths of insanity brewing behind them. Very soon thereafter, she took me to go see my first psychiatrist, Dr. J. Kevin Rist. Dr. Rist would put me on medications. Too many, in fact. They were toxifying my brain, making me worse. I would skyrocket into manic euphoric, get natural highs, and I'd come crashing down into dark abysses of depression and pain. From 17 to 18, it was a rocky road. These ups and downs that were terrifying to my mother as I lived with her. My parents divorced. I became angry and rageful on a regular basis. I would punch many holes in many of my mom's dry walls in her house. And the most optimistic woman in the world would sadly lose her optimism for me. On my 18th birthday, she would tell me to kick rocks and call my father and get out. Clothes on the porch in the rain. I went to go live with my father. It was a rough patch we had. Fighting tooth and nail every day, yelling and screaming matches all the time. He didn't understand me and my mental illness, and I didn't understand him and his disciplinary style. We would scream and yell. The police should have been called for the screaming matches we had. From 18 to 19 years of age, it was an even rockier road. I got so sick mentally that my dad didn't know what to do. He felt so alone, so siloed, and without help of anybody. He didn't know who to talk to, who to turn to, or how to get me the proper help I needed. He tried his best. He did everything he could to balance my brain health, but it wasn't working. Eventually, I turned 19, and I started to have these regular and rapid cycling moments where I'd skyrocket into mania and crash into depression within every week. I'd cycle from Wednesday to the next Thursday. Wednesday to the next Thursday. I'd come up and I'd come crashing down. In these peaks and valleys, I'd also have paranoid delusions where I believed everyone was around me was trying to hurt me, trying to kill me, or trying to end me. In this situation, I would also have hallucinations, auditory and visual, on a regular basis. Hallucinating that people were trying to hurt me as well. I would see death himself hover through my window like you might imagine him from the movies with his sickle, his staff, and his right bony arm. He reached out his other bony hand, turned it upside down. His eyes would light to fire in his skulled face, and he would say, "Come home with me." I would see my ceiling open up and pterodactyls flying above me. I would see giant metal spiders crawling across my walls to eat me alive. It was a terrifying notion. These hallucinations just kept getting worse and worse and worse. I started to see a man in the corner of every room with a butcher blade in his hand. I thought he was coming to kill me, and I thought he was real. I started to see miniature hotels in my room in the corners with a bunch of British people speaking out the windows, yelling and screaming. Little tiny people in a little tiny Renaissance hotel. I was in the worst state of being in my life, but I was pretending in front of my father and everyone around me that I was doing fine. And I was a good pretender. I got really great at silencing my pain. How many of you know anything about silencing your pain and being quiet and feeling like if you talk about your struggles, you're a burden to those you love? It's a common theme in people who are suicidal. We feel we are a burden to those who love us, when in fact, those who love us would only want to help us, guide us, and get us to a safe place. But we can't see it. What we don't know is that suicidal ideations that come about in these times are the greatest liars we know. Depression, suicidal ideations, eating disorders, anxiety, the greatest liars we know. We can't see it. I couldn't see it. On September 24th of the year 2000, I couldn't bear the brunt and the weight of my mental pain any longer. I sat at my desk, I took out my notebook, I took out a pen, and I wrote that note. That note to my mom and my dad, my brother and my sister, my best friend Jake, and my girlfriend at the time. I wrote that note that only 22% of civilians actually write, a suicide note. It said, "Mom, I love you, but you're not always right. Dad, I love you, but stop bringing the office home. This isn't work." I said to my brother Joseph, who wanted to be nothing more than the greatest DJ on the West Coast, to be a household name. I said to my sister Elizabeth, who wanted to make films, "You got this, go get it." I said to my best friend Jake, "You'll find another best friend," as if that's remotely how it works. I put that note in my notebook, and that notebook in my shoulder bag. I put that by the door. At 6 in the morning, I entered my father Patrick's room. He lay there sleeping, wearing his breathing apparatus. He's got that for his sleep apnea. It was a sleep apnea machine. He lay there wearing that sleep apnea machine, snoring, sounding like Darth Vader. I startled him awake as I stood right next to his bed. He looked up at me, took off his mask, and said, "Kevin, what's wrong?" And I wanted to tell him. I wanted to tell the one man who loved me the most in the entire world the truth. But my brain wouldn't allow me. The voices in my head wouldn't allow me. I was hearing voices telling me I was useless, worthless, and had to die. Hearing voices telling me that I had no other course of action to take. That suicide was the only answer. But they were wrong. I just couldn't see it. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. I turned to my father. I said, "Dad, nothing's wrong. I just wanted to tell you that I love you." In my mind, it was for the very last time. He said, "I love you too, Kev. But it's 6 in the morning. And I don't have to be working until 9. Go back to bed." And he put his mask back on. And he fell soundly asleep as quickly as he had awoken. And he had no idea I walked around to the other side of the bed, sat on the carpeted floor, and rocked my body back and forth in tears, begging myself not to tell the one man who loved me the most in the entire world the truth, all the while hoping he would know. And he would ask me the question, "Are you suicidal? And have you made a plan to take your life?" If he had asked me that, I would have told him the truth. You see, asking the question, "Are you thinking of killing yourself? And have you made a plan to take your life?" doesn't put the thought in someone's mind if it's not already there. But for someone thinking those thoughts, it finally gives them permission to speak on their pain. But how could my father know to ask that question? Nobody taught my father suicide prevention. This wasn't his fault, not by a long shot. He did the best he could with what he knew how. I went back to my room at 6:30. I paced in circles in my room, talking to myself from 6:30 to 7, begging myself to tell my dad and plead for help and not do what I was about to do. but the voices were screaming in my head that I had to die. At 7 a.m., my father entered. He said, "Kevin, I'm very worried about you, and I don't know what to do. Why don't you come to work with me today?" I said, "Sorry, Dad, I can't. I got to be at City College today." He said, "Kev, we'll go to the beach. Kev, we'll go to the movies." "Sorry, Dad, can't do it. Really got to be at City College today." "Kev, we'll do whatever you want. I just feel like you need to be with me today." He was spot on. He was so close to figuring it out, but he couldn't quite see it. I welled the welling water in my eyes. I pushed back down. I made myself seem like I was coherent and well, even happy and elated. I was elated. I was happy. I was happy I was about to end the pain. Let me ask you a question. What is the one thing you want to happen when you find yourselves in excruciating physical pain? What is it that you want that pain to do? Stop, go away, or end. That's physical pain. But I argue that brain pain is at the very least 300,000 times worse than any physical pain I've ever been through in my life. And I've been through a lot of physical pain in my life. But nothing has ever come close to the enemy I battle within every day. My father finally looked at me and said, "Okay, Kevin, you seem like you've calmed down. Why don't I take you to City College? You take the bus home. I'll see you home at 6 tonight." I said, "Sounds good, Dad. Sounds perfect." Knowing full well I was going to the Golden Gate and I was never coming home. The Golden Gate Bridge, that's where I decided I was going to end my life. And it wasn't so much a decision as a compulsion. I didn't really decide like you decide to have a cup of coffee or you decide to have a slice of pizza. It was compelled to die by my hands, and that seemed like the simplest option. I thought that you die on impact. We got in my dad's car. I gripped my shoulder bag to my chest because I didn't want him to find the note. He talked the whole ride, which is rare because Pat Hines speaks only when spoken to. Me, I'm a chatty Cathy. I talk too much, but I was silent the whole ride. We got to the kitty corner of the side of the City College campus. My dad turned to me and he said one of his favorite mantras. He said, "Kevin, I love you. Be careful." He said it every day. He calls me sometimes today to say it. "Kevin, I love you. Be careful." I kissed him on the cheek as I had done since I was a little boy. I told him I loved him. And I stepped out of the car with my right foot and I stood. A tear rolled down my cheek, off my chin, landed on my right lug's boot onto the middle shoelace. I'll never forget that moment as long as I shall live. Because I can still see my father driving away and me thinking to myself, that's the last time I'm ever going to see anybody I love, and the very last time anybody I love is ever going to see me, and being completely content to die by my hands from lethal emotional pain. A term coined by a friend of mine named Dr. John Draper of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I wiped the water from my face and I walked on to campus. I walked into the counseling department and I found the most readily available counselor. I asked her to drop me 9.5 of my 12.5 scholastic units at the college. Without asking me one question, not one who, why, what, when, or how, she dropped all my courses except my English class. 9.5 units, dropped without batting an eye. Today, their policy has changed. And when a kid comes into the office and says they're dropping all their courses, they ask a lot of questions, including, are you thinking of killing yourself? But they didn't have those tools back then. I dropped my courses. I went into my English class. And people over time have always asked me why. Kevin, why did you keep your English class? What was the reasoning behind that? It's very simple. It wasn't because I was going to become some literary master. Sure, I wrote a book, but there are 36 errors in the opening acknowledgments alone. No, I went to English class for one reason. The teacher was gorgeous. I just wanted to see her one last time. It would be the only rational thing I did all day. I left that class early. I got onto a muni train. I sat in an area with a cornered reflective glass. I looked at that reflective glass at the man I hated, the man I loathed in the mirror, if you will. The self-hatred was bubbling over. The voices in my head were blinding me and just destroying my mental capacity, telling me I had to die. I sat on that train feeling so useless, feeling so horrible about myself, feeling like such a burden. The voice in my head told me that everyone who loved me would be better off without me. The voice in the head told me that I deserved to die by my hands, and that people hated me and everyone was pretending to love me. The muni train got to the stop where I had to get off and walk a few feet to get to the next bus. I did so. I got on the next bus. I sat in the very back row in the middle seat looking out upon everybody, and I began to cry as soon as it started moving. Softly, and then moderately, and waterfall flowing down my eyes and mucus dripping from my nose. And that's when I began to yell aloud on a crowded bus filled with people. Leave me alone, but I don't want to die. I'm a good person. Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you? And now if they weren't before, 100 people are looking down the barrel of the bus at me but saying absolutely nothing except for one man. One man turns to his left and says to the fellow next to him while pointing at me with his thumb with a smile on his face, "What the hell's wrong with that kid?" And that, my new friends, is what's wrong with some of society today. This innate human ability we have to see someone in the greatest lethal emotional pain they've ever experienced and feel nothing for them but fear of them and apathy toward them. Well, that's his or her problem, but it ain't mine. I formidably disagree with this notion, and I firmly believe that if we are nothing else on this beautiful planet, we are at the very least supposed to be one thing together. Our brothers and sisters and individuals of all kinds keepers. We're not here for personal betterment or gain. We're here to give back to those we know, those we love, those we don't know from Adam, and those we don't even like. What we're not here to do is hurt each other with our words or our actions. That much I know. I wish I knew it back then, but I didn't, sadly. The bus went on. People on it with their fanny packs from 1985 in the year 2000, and their foreign accents from all over the world, and their cameras that weren't yet phones. People on it having a good time, looking forward to going to the ninth wonder of the world, the Golden Gate Bridge, looking forward to seeing what some call the most beautiful man-made structure ever created, what I call a harbinger of death. The bus got to the Golden Gate Bridge parking lot. Everybody deboarded right there, everybody but me. I sat there crying my eyes out, hoping the bus driver would see my pain and say something kind. As a matter of fact, on that bus, before the bus got to the Golden Gate Bridge parking lot, all I wanted was for one person to see me, see my pain, and say something kind. "Hey kid, are you okay? Brother, is something wrong? Or pal, can I help you?" I would have told them everything and begged them to save me. I was not ready to tell my father that morning, but when I was on that bus, I was fully ambivalent, desperately wanting for someone to intervene, but I couldn't say it first because the voices were too loud and too powerful. The bus driver looked at me. He said, "Come on, kid, get off the bus. I gotta go." I stood up. I walked right up to him, looked him right in his eyes as he gazed into mine. Waterfalls flowing from him. He motioned for me to get off the bus. I walked down those 2 steps that felt like 2,000. I walked across the 2-mile stretch of walkway that is the Golden Gate Bridge for 40 minutes crying like a child. I then found a particular light rail. Bikers, joggers, tourists, runners, police officers searching for suicidal people, they all went by me. Twice. Now, to be fair, those officers had not been trained in prevention yet in the year 2000, not in the way they are today. And today they save anywhere from 50 to 120 lives a year, which is amazing because of the training they have in suicide prevention. They're able to talk people back over the ledge to safety. It's phenomenal. They're wonderful officers. 2 of my friends are actually officers on the Golden Gate Bridge doing great work. Shout out Jose Sanchez and Roger Ilaria. You guys are my real heroes. But back then, they didn't know the tools to look for someone like me, and they went by me. I found a particular light rail. I leaned my body over that light rail, crying my tears to the waters below. I'll never forget it. I thought to myself, absolutely nobody cares. It's just the furthest thing from the truth. It was at that moment the voices in my head beckoned at decimals I can't express without piercing eardrums. Jump now, and I did. I walked back toward the traffic railing. I sprinted forward, and I catapulted myself over the rail. I was on no ledge to be talked back to safety. I was in the midst of free fall. But this is the most important part of the presentation, so listen up. The millisecond my hands left that rail and my legs cleared it, I had an instantaneous regret for my actions and the 100% recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life and it was too late. For 99% of those who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, it's been too late. They never again get to tell their stories. They're gone forever. 39 people have survived the fall off the Golden Gate Bridge. I would be number 26 of 39. About 26 remain alive today. Many have died of natural causes or old age. Of the 26 who remain alive today, 19 have come forward to say exactly what I said, that they had an instant regret the moment their hands left the rail. People from all over the world, from all means of suicide attempt, who have survived, have recounted having instant regret. Why? Because they've just recognized in that moment that their thoughts do not have to become their actions. Think about that saying for just a bit. My thoughts do not have to become my actions, as in my thoughts don't have to own, rule, or define what I do next. If all of our thoughts became our actions, we'd all be in a world of trouble, wouldn't we? Think of your parents and them driving with road rage. If all of your parents acted on that road rage, they'd go to jail. If their thoughts always became their actions, they'd be in trouble. So if we recognize that in suicidal crisis, we can always stay here. We can always be here tomorrow and every day after that. I wish I knew that back then. I wish I knew back then that my thoughts did not have to become my actions and that I never had to attempt it in the first place. But I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the forest through the trees. I fell 220 feet, 25 stories at 75 miles an hour in 4 seconds. When I hit the water, it was like hitting a brick wall. You stop for less than a second, then a vacuum sucks you under the water 70 feet. When I hit the water, the impact reverberated through my legs, into my lower back, and it shattered my T12, L1, L2 lower vertebrae. I missed severing my spinal cord by 2 millimeters. I'm making a point. I get to be here. And getting to be here is a privilege and a gift, no matter the pain I'm in. And I have regular thoughts of ending my life, but I'll never take my life that way. I'll never die by my hands. I'll always ask for help today. I have now been in 9 psych wards. I've been in 9 psych ward stays for suicidal ideation in the last 14 years, the last of which was just a year and a half ago. The first 3 were involuntary, forced in against my will. But the last 6, I walked to people who love me, mostly my wife, and said 4 simple but effective words: I need help now. And she guided me to safety. And my wife wasn't around. I told anyone willing to listen that I needed help now. I needed to be safe. I was self-aware enough to ask for that help, to be put in a place where I couldn't harm myself. I hold myself accountable for my mental illness, bipolar disorder. I fight it tooth and nail every day. I read everything I can about the disease so I can survive it. I understand it through and through and how to defeat it. I exercise. I eat healthy most days. I educate myself as to my disease. I work on so many parts of my mental health regimen that it helps me stay stable. It wasn't always easy. It hasn't really been easy even until today. I still struggle. I still have my ups and downs, my manias and my depressions, my peaks and my valleys. But I get through them one day at a time because I believe in myself. I believe in my ability to be well most days if I work tirelessly. As my father told me, Kevin, hard work is nothing good ever came without it. As my mother told me, Kevin, be kind and compassionate, loving and caring, empathetic and non-judgmental to every single person you come into contact with, because you never know what they're going through or what they've been through. So you know what, my friends? I want you to fight to be well. I want you to work hard to recognize your true value. I want you to realize that suicide is never the solution to your problem. It is, in fact, the problem. I want you to know that your life matters, and you matter to me. And I say that with love in my heart and a whole heart. You are beautiful just as you are. You are meant to be here until your natural end. Suicide is never the solution to your problem. It is the problem. And you're a gift to this world, and we're lucky to have you. My friends, thank you for listening to the words I said in this presentation. Thank you for hearing my story from the struggles to the triumphs. Thank you for being there for each other and for being there for yourself. Try to be forgiving of yourself. Try to recognize that you're all 1,000 times greater than the worst thing you've ever done. And try to shift your balance and shift the paradigm of this world so you can be here tomorrow and every day after that. I'm going to end with a quote that means the world to me, and it goes like this. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. But today is a gift. That is why we call it the present. If y'all don't believe me, Master Oogway from Kung Fu Panda said that, and talking cartoon turtles always know what's up. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is our gift. Let us always and forever cherish today and every moment we get to call this beautiful gift called life. Thank you very much. What you're about to see is what I call the art of wellness, a 10-step guide to better brain, mind, behavior, mental, physical, spiritual health, and well-being. Check it out. A lot of people have been asking me, what do I do to stay mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy and well while living with an extreme form of bipolar disorder? Well, let's get right into it. What's cracking, Hope Nation? It's your friendly neighborhood Kevin Hines, and this is another round of Ask Kev, where you, from the interwebs of the world, across all social media platforms, ask me questions and I answer them to the best of my ability. I have been getting question after question about what is my general routine to stay stable. But people have been asking me all over social media, Kevin, how do you stay mentally stable while living with such a severe form of bipolar disorder, type 1 with psychotic features? Well, I'll tell you first of all, it's not easy. I work tirelessly for my better brain health. And during COVID, it's been even harder. But let me break down in this video the 10 steps I utilize to stay tip-top to the best of my ability. Let's get right into it. Number 1, therapy. Therapy is a key go-to for me. Now, I recognize that not everybody can access therapy. Not everyone can afford therapy. But therapy means what it means to you in your particular situation and your life's path. If you go ahead and you educate yourself as to music therapy and art therapy, something you can get books on and teach yourself, meditation therapy, you can be better mentally well. So therapy is different for every person. For me personally, I utilize talk therapy, art therapy, music therapy, blue wave light box technology therapy, and breathing therapy or breathwork therapy. Talk therapy is when you talk to a therapist. Now because of COVID, it's virtual. It's teletherapy rather, and I do that with my teletherapist on a regular basis. I have her on my Zoom calls or on my FaceTime or on Facebook phone call even. That's right, my therapist answers Facebook phone calls. And so I make sure I can see her, she can see me, the expression on my face, my demeanor, my overall well-being, she can tell right away because we worked together for so long. Let's talk about music therapy. Music therapy is amazing. It helps me sleep at night. I listen to music therapy 20 minutes before I go to bed. I used to be an insomniac. This helped change my life. Art therapy. Growing up, I sketched as a kid all my life. I sketched, I drew, mostly superheroes, some real life stuff, some backgrounds, some landscapes, but I really fell in love with it. And when I am feeling in a bad place, I get down, I get a sketch pad out, and I put pen or pencil to paper, and I get to work, and it makes me feel better because it's a release of pain. Now, when I'm doing breathwork therapy, that's resonance breathing. I'm inhaling 4 seconds through my nose, holding for 4 seconds, then exhaling 8 seconds through my lips, like pursed lips, like a whistle, but no sound. I do that 30 times in the morning before I do anything else, before I check my social medias, before I even turn on my phone, before I do anything. I am breathing and getting my mind and body to a calm so I can just cool off and know that this next day is beginning. I do breath work in the morning, in the afternoon before lunch, and right before dinner. I do them because it helps me stay to a cool, collected, and calm place. Resonance breathing does a few things. It lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure. Don't do it if you already have low blood pressure. That's a key thing you must know. Disclaimer. It lowers your blood sugar. Yes, breath therapy lowers your blood sugar. So if you're tackling that right now and you're dealing with blood sugar issues, breathing can be a key way to help you balance your life. It also quells an adrenaline rush, panic attack, and anxiety attack. I do all of these things with breath therapy, and it's amazing. So let's go. We got therapy. That's the first step in my 10-step plan. Let's talk about the 3 E's right there. 3 E's. Education, exercise, and eating healthily, or proper nutrition rather. Eating proper nutrition is so crucial to your better brain health. Now, I will be blatantly honest with you. COVID hit me hard. I was put on a new medication. It decreased all the leptin in my body, making me feel ravenously hungry all the time. And I have gained quite a bit of weight during COVID, but as they say, who hasn't? I'm working it off right now. I'm working really, really hard to stabilize. You saw me sit down with my hoodie on, the sweat on my brow. I just got done with my 3rd workout of the day. And you might think, well, Kevin, that's excessive, but don't worry about it. It's not. I did a 23-minute light exercise this morning on the upper body. I did a 23-minute lower body exercise this afternoon. And I did a 20-minute full body exercise, 23-minute full body exercise this evening. I do that all hours before I go to sleep so I get a great night's sleep. It really helps me out. Triple workout day just because I felt like it and I needed it today. It really helped me out. Helped me feel more mentally stable. Sanity over vanity. So yeah, I've gained some weight, but I'm getting back into shape and I'm getting back on track with my physical routine. But let's get back into the program. Therapy. Education, exercise, eating healthily. I exercise every day and have done so for the last 4 weeks. It's been something that has really kept me stable and feeling good and feeling energized and feeling mentally conscious and aware. I feel like I can get through the day a lot better when I exercise first thing in the morning and then again in the afternoon pre-lunch and then again in the evening pre-dinner. It really is something that helps shape my day. And let's talk about why. 23 minutes of rigorous exercise leads to 12 hours of better mood. And if you're taking care of your mood, you're taking care of your brain health, your brain well-being. 23 minutes, 12 hours of better mood. That's the category. But 23 minutes twice a day, 24 hours of better mood. 3 times a day, you do the math. So that's exercise. Let's talk about eating healthily. Now, during these COVID months, I went a little haywire and I was eating myself out of house and home with everything I could find and not necessarily the most healthy things, but I'm back on track with a good, clean, healthy diet. And let's be clear. Healthy is different for different people. And I want to be crystal clear that I'm eating foods that are non-inflammatory once again, that don't inflame my system, that don't cause me puffiness in my face and bloat around the gut. Obviously, you can see that some of the remnants of that is still going on, but I'm working that out right now. So it's been really good getting back on a clean, nutritious diet. Next to that, let's talk about education. This is one of my favorites. Educating yourself and your family member about what you're going through. So I read every single bit of information I can find on bipolar disorder as soon as it comes out. Every bit of information on bipolar disorder that I can find through a Google alert on bipolar disorder, suicide prevention, mental health and well-being, wellness. I read it all. I devour it whole, and I take it, and if it's reputable and proven, I add it into my routine. That's where the music therapy came in, and the art therapy came in, and the resonance breathing therapy came in, and even the blue wave light box technology therapy came in. All those things came from me reading research papers and studies and things like that, and articles and the like, and blogs about how to stabilize mentally. Just educate yourself as much as you can, especially if you've been diagnosed with a mental illness. So next to that, educating your family, your friends, your confidants, your colleagues about what you're going through. How can they be aware of what you're dealing with if you don't help them understand it first? So instead of being angry at people that don't get you, maybe give them a book like Loving Someone with Bipolar Disorder by Julie A. Fast, or giving them a book like Bipolar for Dummies by Candida Fink and Joe Cranak. I got to be in their 3rd edition of that book, and I was so thankful to do so. So definitely check that book out if you have bipolar disorder. I'm a Catholic. I have a Bible, but Bipolar for Dummies is my 2nd Bible. I use it every day. It helps me stay stable, and it helps me to understand myself and my inner turmoils and how my inner struggles and how I can defeat them one day at a time. Don't let your pain defeat you. Let it build you brick by brick from the ground up. Succeed beyond the pain. Thrive in spite of, despite of the pain. You can do this. I believe in you. Those are the 3 E's: exercise, eating healthy, education. So therapy, exercise, eating healthy, education. That's 4. Let's talk about 5. Coping strategies and mechanisms. Finding things in your life and your existence that help you help yourself heal. So things like grounding techniques and finding tools and really hobbies for yourself that are positive. Reduction of the negative aspects of your life, reducing the negative people in your life. Those are all coping strategies you can utilize. So that's therapy, education, exercise, eating healthy, coping mechanisms and strategies. Let's talk about refraining from drugs and alcohol. I don't use drugs. I don't drink any alcohol. I used to binge drink on the weekends until blackout. I did it a handful of times. I didn't do it every weekend, but I did it a handful of times. I got alcohol poisoning, and at 21 years of age, I got so drunk and I embarrassed myself so bad that I never touched alcohol again. I have not had alcohol since my 21st birthday. I'm very proud of that. I quit cold turkey. It was very hard. I don't recommend that way to do it for anybody, but drugs and alcohol, I know they're not easy to shake. I know substance use disorder is very real. I know that both my biological parents died of mental illness, but they died of drugs and alcohol as I'm adopted. And I know that people are torn up inside and they want to get healthy and they want to get help, but they're struggling with their addictions. I wish you all the best. I'm sending out my love, my good vibes to you. Please work tirelessly to defeat your addiction. You can do this. I believe in you. I know you got this. My birth parents sadly didn't make it. Let that be a lesson to you. You can survive the pain, get through it, and you can reduce the drugs and alcohol in your system to nil, and you can find programs and treatments that help you to defeat your addiction. I believe in you. So therapy, education, exercise, eating healthily, coping mechanisms and strategies, refraining from drugs and alcohol. That's 6 of the 10 steps. Let's get into it. Advocacy. Advocating for yourself and advocating for public policy or legislative advocacy. Self-advocacy looks like being honest about your pain, telling your truth to others, telling your therapist the truth instead of lying. You can't get forward in therapy unless you tell the truth. Lying in therapy only gets you down a dark path. So being honest in therapy is key of any kind. Advocating for yourself in the sense that if medications you happen to be put on are making you feel uneasy, tell the truth about that so you can get to different meds. Meds don't work well for everyone. I take meds that work well for me. I'm lucky that I found those meds. I'm lucky that they work well. I'm lucky I got to a better place because of them. But that's just a piece of the puzzle. This entire 10-step program is really everything that works together at the same time. Advocating for myself in therapy sessions, with doctors. I've had so many primary care physicians and physical doctors of all kinds tell me that I'm psychosomatic. And if you don't know what that means, it means they're blaming my fear of physical illness on my mental state. And they're saying that I'm basically fictitiously making up in my head. I remember vividly when I went into a pulmonary specialist's office and told him I was having a really hard time breathing, he told the doctor next door that I was psychosomatic and that it was all in my head. Turned out that I had some issues with my lungs that were very serious, and he didn't even take it seriously. So you have to deal with these things and that shame and that stigma and that discrimination and that marginalization because you have a diagnosis of mental illness. It really sucks. I've had many of those situations occur, actually. I was once having a grand mal seizure, and they said it was psychosomatic, which it wasn't. It was a devastating seizure that caused a great deal of pain to my system. Nonetheless, we move forward. So that's self-advocacy. Let's talk about legislative advocacy. Let me give you a prime example of legislative advocacy. My father, after the film The Bridge came out, if you haven't seen the film The Bridge by Eric Steele, check that out. The Bridge is about the deaths on the Golden Gate Bridge in 2006. And Eric Steele made this film about why there's no rail up on the bridge right now and why it hasn't happened. My father was so inspired by this, he founded the Bridge Rail Foundation with Dave Hull and Paul Muller. Dave Hull lost his daughter to the Golden Gate Bridge tragically. Dave, thank you for being such a servant to this country and the world in doing the work you do. And Paul Muller, thank you for your efforts and your hard work in changing the situation and making sure that we never stop fighting for this net to be raised at the Golden Gate Bridge. And thank you to my dad, Pat Hines, for pushing forth the fight. And thank you to Alexis Durat St. James for being the original funder for the Bridge Rail Foundation. You are an amazing human being and a gift to this world. And so the Bridge Rail Foundation fought for the better part of 14 to 16 years, including myself doing this work in legislative advocacy, to raise the net at the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, guess what? It's going up right now. It's being built and it will be done by 2023. And as of 2023, not one more beautiful soul will ever again be lost to the Golden Gate Bridge, and it will become the largest and brightest beacon for suicide prevention around the world. It's amazing. So excited. That's legislative advocacy. That's where you get a small group of like-minded people that make great change and can change the world. Let's move on. So we've got therapy, education, exercise, eating healthily, coping strategies and mechanisms. We've got refraining from drugs and alcohol. We've got advocacy. The next step I want to tell you about is meditation. Now, we all heard that meditation can benefit us and help keep us more mentally stable. Meditation is so crucial for the body to live in a present state of mind. Being here with you right now is the only place I want to be. I'm with you, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you through this lens, and it's like I can see into your soul. And I know some of you are going through a hard time. I want you to find meditation, the kind that works for you. Do your research. Transcendental meditation is great. There's many meditations that can work for you. I find that tm.org is one of the best resources for meditation that works for a lot of people around the world. I met Bob Roth, one of the founding members of Transcendental Meditation, a genius in his own right. He's a great man, a man I call friend, and I find that meditation helps you recognize your true value by recognizing your inner peace and finding a way to stay calm in the face of all this manic world that we live in. This world is filled with mania. It's filled with disruption. It's filled with too many influences, and it's filled, frankly, with too much stimulation. And sometimes you need to bring that all to a calm. And that's where that resonance breathing comes into play with the meditation alongside it. The Calm app is a wonderful app for meditation, so check that out. Not a sponsored post, by the way. Just love that app. And Headspace as well. Two great apps for meditation. I want to give you guys those resources because they're out there and they're meant to help you. And if you need someone to talk to and you're able to afford a therapist, BetterHelp is a great place for talk therapy. So is Talkspace. We don't want to discriminate. We want to collaborate, not compete. Let's let everything help everybody. How about that? So meditation. Let's talk about medication. That's my next step. Medication. Medication, as I said earlier, is not for everybody. It works really well for me, but it took me a long time to find the right kind for me. And when I say a long time, I mean one hell of a long time. It took me a long time to find the right meds for me, but I did, and I have, and I feel so much better with them now. The medication I take with 100% accuracy each and every day without fail, and I take it at the same time every day without fail, because it helps stabilize my system and keep me safe from myself when or if I become suicidal. I can take a PRN to make me calm down. All these things are very helpful. A PRN is like a rapid release medication that helps you in the moment of a panic attack or a stress attack or even a suicidal state of mind. So next to that, let's get right into step 10, the final step of the 10-step plan, the art of wellness. It's called the plan, your mental health emergency plan. Everybody has mental health, and thus everybody has to take care of it. And if you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice. So get right to it and get to work and build your plan. Your plan is basically, for me, it was a binder back in the day. A binder I handed to my 5 closest family members and friends, and they became my personal peer protectors, my personal protectors, as I call them. And they were the people that had my plan. They knew my doctor's information. They had a release form signed. HIPAA laws were usurped, meaning that they could talk to my doctor and ask them anything about my treatment, and my doctor had to tell them everything about my treatment to make sure I was physically safe. If I couldn't keep myself safe, they could keep me safe through the plan. They had my doctor's name, number, email, address, everything, and vice versa. And anytime I wasn't able to take care of myself, then these people came forward, and guided me to a safe place. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a quick version of The Art of Wellness, my 10-step guide to better brain health. I wanted to help you find hope. I wanted to help you find healing. And I wanted to help you be well and be here tomorrow and every single day after that. Be well, be kind, compassionate, loving, caring, empathetic, and non-judgmental to every single person you come into contact with, no matter their behavior toward you, because you never know what they're going through. You never know what they've been through. And be good to yourself. You belong here. You deserve this life and to your natural end. Suicide is never the solution to your problem. It is the problem. I believe in you. This life is the greatest gift we've ever been given or will ever be given. Guys, be well and be here tomorrow. Okay. Ready, set, down, 1, down, 2, down, 3, down, 4, down, 5, down, 6, down, 7, down, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
My name is Eric Hewson, and I'm a mental health advocate for an organization that works to normalize conversations about mental health called Same Here. Same Here is a sign language sign. It means you and I were the same. In the context of mental health, it means I face challenges in my life just like you. We all face challenges that impact our mental. You're going to hear from a number of my friends in this short video, all advocates with their own organizations working in the mental health and suicide prevention field. I've worked my whole career in offices of professional sports teams and leagues. Some of my friends you're going to hear from in this video have actually played professional sports. Some of them are public speakers and give speeches on large stages almost daily to thousands of people. We all live in different parts of the country and even the world. But more important than any of that, what ties us all together is that we've all been impacted by suicidal thoughts. Because of our careers and the way we present ourselves, you may not have expected that any of us would have ever been affected by such thoughts. That right there is the point of us sharing this video. Having suicidal thoughts impact you is not a weakness. It can and does happen to so many of us, and often can sneak up on us without warning. That's how it happened to me, and I'm going to describe how it felt coming up so that you know what to look out. All learn in school about fire safety and how to stop, drop, and roll if we're ever to catch on fire. However, we learn that just in case a fire emergency occurs. Most of us do not ever catch on fire. But if we do, it's vital we have a plan to stay as safe as possible. The same is true for this lifesaver tool we'll teach you now. Because suicidal thoughts can sneak up on us, it's important that we have a comforting plan as to what we should do if they arrive to find safety, just like we do with Stop, Drop. Personally, my suicidal thoughts felt like they came out of nowhere. I had been living under a lot of stress that built up inside of me over many, but I was still going on with my career. And that stress in the past had come from difficult life events related to major health ailments that members of my family had been fighting. And when that stress builds up inside any of us over time, like it did with me, it caused these error messages in our brain. And we refer to these messages as suicidal thoughts. Unfortunately, when difficult and painful things happen to us in life and build up inside of us, we are all susceptible to some of these thoughts in our brains changing to these error messages, ones that can lead us to feeling suicidal. What do these messages feel and sound like in our heads so that you can recognize them and know when to use this tool? Feel like thoughts and images of self-harm and injury to our own body. They're thoughts and images of self-harm actions that we would never actually want to do, but when we have these thoughts, they feel strong and almost like they're magnetic pulls driving us to carry them out. They play over and over on repeat in our brain. Now here's the good news. No matter how powerful they are, and no matter how upset you may feel if you experience them, you are not alone. Including my friends here in this video, many millions of people around the world have these thoughts. And by knowing what to do if they arrive, you're able to have that comforting plan to follow, just like if we were in a fire, that will bring us to safety. We're all in this with you. Same here. Now, I'd like to introduce my first friend who will talk about the L in the Lifesaver tool, Victor Armstrong from North Carolina.
Hi everyone, this is Victor Armstrong from Charlotte, North Carolina. L in Lifesaver stands for look around. When those suicidal thoughts come on, you first want to look around you and see someone is nearby, a friend, family member, neighbor, or even just a friendly face. If someone is nearby, great. If you're alone, you have the option to use your phone and either dial 1-800-273-8255 to talk to someone about your thoughts, or text CNQR to 741-741 to remember, you are reaching out to these people for help. It's okay. You are not alone, and they can guide you to safety. Now, here's my friend, Stephanie Caminiti from Australia, to talk about the letter I in the Lifesaver tool.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Caminiti from Australia and the Inner Ninja Foundation. I in the Lifesaver tool stands for Initiate Dialogue. It's great that from Victor's direction, you looked around to find someone. Now you need to start the conversation either in person, on the phone, or through text, whichever way you are able to connect. To start that dialogue, it's important you get right to the point and say, I am not okay right now and I need your help. Remember, you are not alone. So many people have these thoughts. You are just letting someone know about them. Now here's my friend Kevin Hines, originally from California, to talk to you about the letter F in the Lifesaver tool.
What's crackin', Hope Nation? It's your friendly neighborhood Kevin Hines. From San Francisco, currently living in Atlanta, and with the Kevin and Margaret Hines Foundation. The F in the Lifesaver tool stands for Find a Safe Spot. Why is this so important? These error messages that Eric mentioned, they often make us feel like we have to go somewhere, do something dangerous, potentially deadly. Remain as calm as possible, knowing that these thoughts you're having are only temporary. The best thing you can do after reaching out like you did with the previous letter directions is to find any safe spot and stay there, even if you feel like going elsewhere. By staying in one spot, you'll be able to tell people where you are, and you will more likely stay out of harm's way. Now here's my friend, Hayden Hurst from the Atlanta Falcons, to bring it home, would tell us what the E in Lifesaver tool stands for. Be well, be kind to each other, be kind to yourselves, and be here tomorrow.
Hi everyone, I'm Hayden Hurst from the Atlanta Falcons and the Hayden Hurst Family Foundation. E in the Lifesaver tool stands for explain. Once you've contacted someone and have found a safe spot to stay, you can explain to the person you've contacted what's happening. You can say, I'm having suicidal thoughts and I need you or someone else to come here now and help. You can then tell them exactly where you are located. As someone who has played on teams my whole life, there's no shame in working with others to be with your teammates, as you explain what's going on, where you are, and ask for them to come help.
By following the plan of LIFE lifesaver that my friends just shared, regardless of how intense and challenging your thoughts may feel, you will be prepared if they arrive and will know the safest way to handle them and find the help you need. As everyone is sharing, we all need help sometimes in our lives, and that's perfectly okay. Thank you for listening, and we're so glad you all now have a plan you can follow if you start to feel the thoughts that have been described. We all want you here, today, tomorrow, and beyond. You are loved, and the world needs you.
Last year, a record 524 military veterans committed suicide. Today, more military veterans die at their own hands than in combat. Before 9/11, the military suicide rate was about half that of civilians. After the war in Afghanistan began in 2001, the rate began to climb. By 2009, it had risen nearly 80%. Today, 1/5 of Americans who commit suicide are or were in the military. The most obvious explanation is psychological trauma from combat, PTSD. But it isn't that easy. 52% of troops who have committed suicide were never deployed, and that's according to the Pentagon. If not PTSD, then what and why? Some suggest that the type of person to enlist changed after September 11th. And in 2006, the armed forces weren't meeting their recruitment quota, so they relaxed their standards for 2 years. That period has been a point of contention in the military suicide debate. Mental illness can easily go undetected during recruitment and then remain hidden, especially given the machismo culture of the military. In May, Major General Dana Pittard wrote in his block, "I am personally fed up with soldiers who are choosing to take their own lives so that others can clean up their mess. Be an adult, act like an adult, and deal with your real-life problems like the rest of us." Admitting to emotional struggles often disqualifies troops from promotions. According to a 2008 study, troops were 4 times as likely to seek help when anonymity was promised. Well, whatever the reason, the frightening rise in suicide is a trend that most expect to continue. Joining us is suicide survivor Kevin Hines. He is one of 33 people to have survived after jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. He's the author of the new book, Cracked But Not Broken. Kevin, thanks so much for being with us today. I mean, your story on its own is amazing, and that you're taking your experience and turning it toward the military, I think is so admirable. You reach out to veterans mostly because, you know, you think that the military is in dire need right now of mental health care.
Yes.
How does it get to be to that point, and are we doing enough at all?
It gets to be that point when for the longest time in that culture, being quiet was the key. Now we're talking about it. Now we're telling the truth. Now the Pentagon's releasing these numbers. It's time to take full action. And by that I mean, you know, I wrote an article called Military Suicides, The Answer. In that article I described a good idea would be to look into things like transcendental meditation, Department of Defense wide, and have the ability then to help people cognitively take care of their mental health issues on a day-to-day basis, giving them the time they need to do so.
Yeah, and what does that include? Screening people during recruitment? I mean, do you think that's a step that needs to be taken?
I think heavy screening needs to be done prior to and during recruitment, because if you're not delving deep into that pool, you're not going to find what's at the bottom.
And that's interesting because and it's something that, as they said, there was a lapse in doing that for a while since 9/11, a 2-year lapse. Tell us a little bit about PTSD. What is the danger of assuming PTSD is the cause of so many of these suicides?
Well, the danger in assuming that that's the only answer is that we miss the truth. And you know, we have to look at the 52% that are non-deployed, non-active combat. What does that mean? What is that telling us? That there are bigger answers and broader answers here, and we need to do our research to find out what those answers are. We need to help them at every level, mental health, prevention, and otherwise.
Yeah, and in the military, I mean, let's talk about mental illness as it pertains to the military. I understand the military's point of view to a certain degree. You know, you don't want people with mental health issues out on the front lines, as it were. And if you are in the military, you don't want to admit it because then you lose your commission, you get discharged. How do you strike that balance?
Well, we have to come to some kind of middle ground. We can't be putting our military out there in the field having just been put on mental health medications and not used to those medications yet, which is a high number of that going on right now. And so we have an opportunity here to solve this problem at the base level and work extremely hard to do so. And we need to talk to our mental health clinicians, our mental health support, and get the answers that we so desire.
And what about, you know, one thing that we've covered pretty, I would say, covered very well on this show. We've given it a lot of time, is military sexual assault. 26,000 women in the military assaulted in just a year. Is there any tie to the two? I mean, how can we address both problems at once? And because they're both about taboo in a way, aren't they?
They're both about taboo, and they're both very scary things to look at, but we need to address them. I was at a Marine base last year where I spoke about suicide prevention in my story. And prior to me speaking, there was a sexual assault seminar, and the number that they quoted was that there were 15 open rape cases at that base at that particular time. That's unacceptable. That means an entire culture needs changing, but we have the ability to do so. We just need to work a little bit harder in finding those answers.
And are you finding the military receptive to these conversations?
Absolutely. Everybody in that room was ears wide open and eyes wide open, and they were paying attention because it's important. And the people at the top, I work with General Mark Graham, who said we are the land of the brave, land of the free because of the brave. And he and I speak about suicide prevention all over this great nation, and we want to stop this from happening anymore, both of those situations.
Yeah.
It's time that we do the right thing all day, every day.
What about your story, and how long ago was it that you attempted suicide?
I attempted to take my own life off the Golden Gate Bridge in the year 2000, and it was a terrible time in my life because of bipolar disorder, and I found a way to live mentally well most days, and I go 1 to 3 weeks out of the year and visit military bases and veterans hospitals and other military groups to talk about why they should not die by suicide. As a matter of fact, when I did that once in a base in New Bern, North Carolina, a young man came up to me, he was a Lance Corporal in maybe 4 or 5 years, and he said to me, "I was going to kill myself today, you are the reason I am not." And he took off his Lance Corporal chevron and he placed it on my lapel. And that was about the most moving experience I've had within the military.
That's about the most moving story I've heard in a long time, too. I mean, that, and so clearly you've taken. Now, did you survive a jump, or did you stop? Or did
I survived a jump,
Yeah. 220
220 feet, 25 stories, 75 miles an hour.
It's just an extraordinary thing even to imagine. Your story, though, when it silences a room when you say it here. When you're in a room full of military people, do you speak to them in general, or do you speak to the ones who have either considered or are having mental problems at the moment, or do you speak to most of them in a big room?
I would say both. I would say that I look at the room and I assume that there are people in that room that are thinking about it right now, and I want to help them directly. I want to reach them right now, or right at that time of that speech. But I also speak to them in a general sense to let them know that there is help, even though they may feel that controversy within the military not to talk. There is help, there is hope, there is healing. Those might be all cliche words, but they are true.
Yeah.
The mental health system is working hard.
And Kevin Hines, there's no telling how many lives were saved by you because you weren't able to take your own. So thank you for doing what you're doing on behalf of so many of us.
Hi everybody, welcome back after the video. My name is Kathy Castle. I'm Executive Director of Channel Marker. We're proud to be here tonight. This is our 6th out of 7 video series that we've done with Kevin. Hi Kevin. And you have some of the panel with you tonight, are some of the training collaborative from some great agencies that have worked hard to put these videos on. And we've had support from Maryland's Behavioral Health Administration, Midshore Behavioral Health, Arundel County Health Department, Arundel Mental Health Agency, and my agency, Channel Marker. Just a quick reminder, you can certainly put some questions in the chat or the Q&A. We're monitoring that for you. And we will have one more installment of these videos on June 10th, and that demographic will be the male perspective. So I get the best job here, and it's to introduce both of our speakers on the panel. And the first one I'm going to introduce is Pete Smith. Pete's trying to come in. Hey, Pete. We've given Pete our backgrounds. He's one of the crew. I'm pleased to announce Mr. Pete Smith to join our panel tonight. Pete currently serves as the Military and Veterans Liaison for Anne Arundel County here in Maryland. And he's also a comptroller for the Department of Defense. He previously served as a county councilman in the 1st District from 2012 to 18. He served in the United States Marine Corps for 22 years with 13 years of active duty. And I believe you're still in the reserves, right, Pete?
That's correct.
And he was is an intelligence officer for the Marine Corps Reserves. Pete's a member of the Military Order of World Wars, the American Society of Military Comptrollers, Toastmasters International, and the Marine Corps Association. And I know something he talked to me about today that he's pretty proud of. He serves as a Anne Arundel County coordinator for Toys for Tots. And he's also proud dad of 2 kids. So Pete, we are delighted to have you here tonight with us. And then, of course, the man of the night, Kevin Hines, is here with us. And, you know, you certainly learned a lot about him. Unless you're returning to our video series, you've gotten to see him some other times. But so glad to have Kevin. He is, as you know from the video, from what you already have seen, you know, the video told it all about Kevin. But Kevin is an author. He's a filmmaker. He's an advocate. He's a friend to every single person he meets, literally. And him and his wife have come together with such a great partnership to spread suicide prevention and education literally across the planet. And he devotes his life to us, spreading his passionate message of hope and healing and recovery. And Kevin, we can't thank you enough for joining us on this project. And I can't believe we're starting to wind down on these videos. But Kevin, I'm gonna leave it to you now and just thank you from the bottom of our hearts for helping us with this in Maryland.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Pete, and to everyone involved in putting these videos together and promoting them and getting them out to the public. Pete, thank you so much for being a panelist today and for sharing your story with us. If you could just start off by telling us a little more about your life story and your life's journey pre-Marines, and then we'll get into you joining the Marines and your life afterwards.
Yeah, believe it, Kevin, and you and I we're pretty much the same generation. I was born in '80. I think you were born in '81. So we were exposed to the same '80s, '90s sort of upbringing that kind of shaped our worldviews to some extent. My family, mom was very young when she had her kids. She had 5 of them before she turned 20. So my sisters and brothers, 3 sisters, 1 brother, we're all exactly 1 year apart. I don't know how a woman could be pregnant 5 years in a row, but she was able to do that before she turned 20. And I think us growing up in that sort of world where everything was unpredictable. You know, my mother, you know, she'll tell you she did what she had to do to put food on the table. None of us had our fathers in our lives, and it created this sort of unstable environment for, you know, my siblings and I, and I think that sort of, you know, created a lot of turmoil in our lives growing up, and some bad decisions were made. Ultimately, though, I wound up getting it. I'm from Chicago originally. Ultimately, I wound up enlisting in the Marine Corps. I didn't get accepted into the Naval Academy. I now know why. I thought my 20 on the ACT was really good. Apparently it's not. And so the funny part is I've been in the Marines for the last 23 years now, and I've had the opportunity to sit on panels that review applicants who are going into the academy. It's so crazy, but I myself could not get in there. And so those who don't do teach. And so I've been had the ability to sort of shape the military to some degree, to look for those non-tangible skill sets that I think people have, like me. I didn't have the academics, and partially because it just wasn't something that was pushed in my life when I was growing up. But I had the passion and the willingness to want to survive and do something more meaningful with my life. And so that's how I ended up in the military.
And can you tell us about your experience in the military from its inception, the beginning, to the middle until now, and your positions today? So can you kind of walk us through your lived experience in the military?
So, you know, I enlisted when I was 18, right out of high school in '98. I went to boot camp. Initially, I didn't think I wanted to do that. I wasn't planning on going in the Marines, and I was going to try to get into the Naval Academy. But when they didn't accept me, I just sort of rebelled and went into the Marine side of the house. And quite frankly, it was probably the right decision. I think, and no disrespect to the other services, but I do think we're the hardest branch, you know. So a point of pride for me on that one. And I became an intel specialist, SIGINT, which is how ultimately I wound up at Fort Meade at the National Security Agency, which is where I spent most of my adult life. But I've, you know, went through several different duty stations. I was in Florida at Corey Station, which was pretty cool for first, post boot camp environment for 18-year-old. I then went on to Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, which I did not like, but it was something that helped shape my future because I went to school, I got a part-time job, but it was pretty isolating working in Cuba because we worked on JPJ Hill. You could not go into like the cities. You couldn't leave the base. And so it was kind of pretty isolating, dealing with that specific duty station. I went from there in like 2000 to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So that's where I was with 2nd Intel Battalion, 2nd Radio Battalion, supporting those different elements. Cool duty station as far as like skill sets, what the opportunities I had. But Jacksonville was not really the ideal location for a young Marine, single, sort of in an environment with thousands of other Marines. It just didn't lend itself to be like ideal. But I did excel from a Marine standpoint. I went to night school again, and you'll see this trend where at each duty station I continue to pursue my education until I ultimately graduated with my degree in information technology. And so I went from Camp Lejeune to Iwakuni, Japan, because I re-enlisted in 2001, my first re-enlistment, because of a girl. I thought this girl was like, her name was Keisha Corporal Erickson. I'll never forget who she was. I was in love with this girl. And then she wound up dumping me right after I enlisted. And I was like, oh, I took these orders to come be with you, and now you're dumping me. Like, I can't go back on this. And I thought my life was over. That I re-enlisted for a girl, and then she dumped me. And I once told someone that I saw her in a club a couple months later, and tried to walk over to her to talk to her, and then she did one of these like muff, like she did one of those things to me. I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. And so that didn't work out. And I wish her well. I don't know where she's at, but she was partially the reason I stayed in the military. And once I re-enlisted and I got to my 8-year mark, I went to Iwakuni, Japan, which I love. Japan is a very lovely duty station. I had a bunch of different educational opportunities as well. And then I wound up getting stationed in Fort Meade the first time back in 2003, which is where I wound up sort of really cementing my place and making my home, because I didn't want to move around a lot. In my youth, I moved all the time. And I knew that when I had kids and got into a serious relationship, I didn't want that for my family. But I also deployed during those time frames. I was in Iraq, I was in Afghanistan, I was in some other stands, Korea, and saw a lot of crazy stuff. There were times when I didn't think I was going to make it back. And we're talking about mental health, and it's the irony is there was one moment in Iraq specifically where I thought that that was going to be the end of me. And I can sort of talk about this later on in this discussion. But I always saved. We always had magazines with us with about 30 rounds in each magazine, bullets, and I always had like 4 or 5 magazines. And when I went to Iraq, this was in 2007, we had, in 2005 or a couple years earlier, they had the Fallujah incident where they had captured some folks and they beheaded them and burned them and hanged them on the bridge. Believe it or not, it was a bridge that they hung the bodies from. And I had always told myself that I was not going to be that guy being, beheaded and burned from a bridge, and that I would just take my own life if I ever needed to do that. So in these 6 magazines that I always carried with me, I always told myself, and this the psychology that you kind of put, the mindset you put yourself in, it's so weird. I always told myself that the last round was always going to be for me. Like I was never going to just allow them to sort of, do harm to me. That I would survive and try to take, as many of them out as I could. But ultimately, I would be the one to end my own life. And so to be here with you on this story, talking about mental health, to talk about a bridge, to talk about suicidal ideation, the fact that I had these own sort of thoughts in my own head, even while in the military, just because I didn't want someone else to do it for me, is beyond sort of comparison.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that insightful, important, and crucial story as part of this panel. I mean, there's very few people with that level of lived experience that you've had, and your suicidal ideations really come from a different place. They were from a survival standpoint,
Yeah.
and not wanting to die at the hands of quote unquote the enemy. And so that's a lot different from my personal experience. But let me ask you on that note,
Mhm.
had you ever had suicidal ideations in the past, and had you ever had them going forward to be with you right now?
So it's funny. I was talking to your partner in crime here earlier today, and I had mentioned to her that I don't know if it was. So when I was about 10 years old, we lived in the Pullman area. The Pullman area is a part of Chicago that there was a guy named George Pullman, and he built rail cars in the early 1900s, and very wealthy guy. And he had a factory that was built on the south side of Chicago. But he also had like a town, a little neighborhood that was built to sustain that factory where all the employees worked at. So we lived in this neighborhood in the early, maybe like 91. I was probably like around 11 years old. And, I told you a lot of the trauma that went in our lives with our fathers. My mom had 5 kids and 4 fathers, right, of those 5 kids. And none of those fathers were in our life. And so it was just all this, it was just, you didn't know how you were going to survive from day to day. Right. And I remember getting so mad at my mom one time. We were living in this apartment in that Pullman area. My mom didn't sell drugs. She didn't do drugs, but my uncle did. And so my uncle sold drugs, and he used to keep the drugs at our house in a green can that he kept underneath my mom's bed. And my mom, when you have kids like 10, 8, 9, we get into everything. There's nothing that we won't find in a house when you have boredom and you have youth on your side, right? And so we found ways to figure out what was going on. We would open up the cans, and we always wondered what it was. And so my he would give my mom money to buy food. And I don't blame her. I don't judge her. I still love her. I take care of her even to this day. I moved her here about 8 years ago. But I remember sort of arguing with my mom because, we just didn't have the upbringing that I thought that I wanted, maybe that I saw on TV. We grew up watching probably the Cosby Show, right? And so what normal families should look like, and then you think back, wow, that was like just a TV. So I got into this argument with my mother in public, 11 years old. She put me on punishment, and I remember going into my room and being so frustrated at her that I wanted to like cause her pain. And so the pain wasn't that I was going to do something to her. The pain was that I was going to do something to me. So I remember taking my belt, that you wrap around your waist, and I put that belt around my neck, and I'm just squeezing and I'm pulling on the back. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what I was trying to accomplish. I'm being straight honest. At the moment, it's just one of those things where I just said, life fucking sucks. Excuse my language. And I was upset about, whatever created that conflict with my mom. And the only way that I could like make her feel pain, at least in my head, was to cause pain to me. And I don't know why an 11-year-old would even think that was an appropriate thing to do. But I promise you, this was on 113 and Champagne, and we were living on the 3rd floor, and I'm in the bedroom, and I closed the door. My sisters and brother, they were outside. My mom was like at work somewhere. She had left. And I'm just frustrated that and I still to this day don't even know what the issue was about. But all I do remember is putting the belt around my neck and pulling the strap tight so that I would fall unconscious or whatever. It never got to that point where I fell unconscious. I started crying, and like you were describing with the nose and the coming from the stuff coming from your nose, that was me, and I was so frustrated. I'm so grateful nothing happened. I didn't tie it to anything and try to hang myself. Maybe I was nervous of pain potentially, but I didn't do anything up to that point. But for some reason, it was the first thing that came to my mind that I'll just I don't have to be here. And I was easily 11 years old, maybe in 5th grade, potentially 5th or 6th grade. I can't remember in which specific grade, but that was like the one brush with sort of suicidal ideation that I had sort of when I was younger. And what's the irony is when I get into the military 10 years later, I wound up writing a play. that I actually did right here at Fort Meade. And the play was called Final Decision. And in the play, it was about a Marine named Lance Corporal Smith. I literally have the script to this day, who had suffered from family loss. His girlfriend broke up with him, and he thought that the only thing to do was to for this temporary issue that you talked about, because everything we go through is temporary, was to end his life with this final decision, which is why I called it Final Decision. And we did that play right here on Fort Meade to all of the audience, to all of the military members on the base, because it was an annual requirement. And I drew from that some of the elements from my life that would cause Lance Corporal Smith to even think that this final decision was suitable for something that's temporary.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'd love to get the chance to read that play because it sounds amazing. When you did perform that play in front of your peers, what was the response?
Well, so one, they were excited about it in a sense that normally the military is required to do this reading, some CBT or something like that, and it gets pretty sort of mundane. And so for me, I really wanted them to see, like you, I wrestled, I did theater and in high school, and so I was trying to draw from these things that I thought I was decent at, and do something different for this military crowd to show them kind of what signs to look for, like the behavior patterns and things like that. And so I would hope to think that they were thoroughly entertained because we did sort of over exaggerate some things from a theatrical standpoint, but the whole point was to show you that and to showcase that people go through a lot of different things. You can get PTSD from a lot of different things. Like you mentioned, you don't necessarily have to be in war to experience trauma. You can literally be at home. When I went through my divorce, that was trauma and it was traumatic. And so people go through a number of different things, whether you're in the military or not, that will push them to the brink where they believe that this temporary solution requires something that's going to be final. And I thought the audience was it was a military audience. It was well received, and then the military went and actually created a similar video based off of that script in the play that we had performed. So that was pretty cool to see that progress.
Oh, that's fantastic. We'll have to find a way to get that video for the next series of these videos, right, Kathy? Well, I think we should probably look and see if we have any questions. Do we have any questions, Kathy?
Dana?
Yeah. Hi. So
Dana?
yeah, we do. Hi. We do have a few questions. One question for both of you. Do either of you ever talk to high school or college students about suicide or risk of suicide?
Pete, why don't you go ahead and answer first?
I probably not. As I may have talked to high school students about other issues, just growing up in poverty and things like that, but never about suicidal ideation or trauma, and I've never done that.
Okay.
And I have traveled the world talking to high schools on a regular basis. I would say anywhere between any given year pre-COVID, 30 to 50% of my presentations were high schools. And then the next 50% or so would be made up of military, law enforcement, hospital associations. Since that interview you saw with the War Room, where I said I spent 3 to 6 weeks going to military bases and veterans hospitals, it's now grown to be much larger.
Excellent. And then there's also a question for Kevin. Can you discuss whether relapse from bipolar disorder or other mental illnesses is inevitable?
Oh, wow. It's fascinating. I've never gotten this question before, which is rare for me. So I will tell you that I don't think or look at it as it being inevitable, although I have relapsed many, many times to my skyrocketed back into mania and fallen into depression, having hallucinations, having to go back into the hospital 9 times in the last 14 years past my suicide attempt off the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't believe it's inevitable, even though I've not experienced, and this is why. It's been now 2.5 years that I have not gone back to the hospital. And I'm working very, very hard on my mental health and well-being. I'm following that 10-step regimen, the Art of Wellness 2.0. I'm really working hard to stabilize mentally. And I believe if I really focus on my mental well-being every single day in these 10 steps that I utilize daily, I believe I can stay out of the hospital, out of harm's way, away from suicide. I might still have the thoughts. I might still have the symptoms, which I do. I'll still have the signs and the triggers, but I'm able to cope because I have self-awareness. And that is the best place you want to find yourself when you're struggling mentally, is self-aware with your diagnosis. And so instead of someone outside of me saying, Kevin, you're manic, Kevin, you're depressed, Kevin, you're paranoid, I say it to myself, and then I go to the person who loves me, and like my wife, and I say, honey, I need help now. And so for the last 20 years of living with suicidal ideations, I've never attempted again. So that's a big thing. And for the last 2.5 years, I've never been back in the hospital for a full relapse. I've had symptoms and triggers and issues, but never back to the hospital. So I think it's possible to fight it and to beat it one day at a time. It's a process.
Thank
Kevin,
you.
If I can add to that, what's inspiring about your story, it is similar to sort of the military. There's a Marine that I've known for quite some time. His name is Corporal Dandria, Sergeant Dandria. He was medically retired, but in 2010-ish timeframe, he actually was a double amputee. He was in Iraq, and his vehicle hit an IED, and he lost both of his legs. I say that to say this: when he came home and he was dealing with the recovery process of losing his legs, he recognized, and he had suicidal ideations as well. I will tell you that he struggled with maintaining living, and since then he's tried to find purpose in his life, and he has. And that's what I think, what I find inspiring about you is you found that purpose, and your purpose with helping other folks recognize the value that they have on this planet. He is never going to have his legs again. He will always be a double amputee, but he's found a way to work around his limitations, his medical situation that he's in, to still add value to the people that are around him and to others in his world. Just like you have this sort of medical limitation, it's not paralyzing you from doing other things, but you found a way to work around it with this either 10-step program 2.0 that you're leveraging, but you're still adding value to the world and recognizing that you're not going to have your legs again. Just like Corporal Dandria doesn't have his legs, but that doesn't mean that he can't change the lives of people that he come in contact with. And so it was the parallel sort of situation that I've been able to sort of, when I listen to your story and I see Corporal Dandria, I see these sort of parallel issues that you both struggle with day to day, just maintaining that purpose and that vision. And so just kudos to you for being able to do that.
Thank you, Pete. And it's a balance, right? You're on a teetering line, and you have to walk very carefully on that line and work very hard to stay stable and stay above water, as they say, no pun intended. But yeah, that's where I find myself today, stable to the best of my ability, living with the diagnosis, living with the symptoms and the triggers, but fighting them and living well with them. And I used to look at myself as a sufferer, and I say this in a lot of my presentations. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. It's a choice. My clinicians all told me, Kevin, you're suffering from bipolar disorder, you're suffering from depression, you're suffering from a mental illness. And thus I adopted that narrative as my own. And that made me a victim of my own story if I became the sufferer. And what I recently experienced 2.5 years ago, right along the time I was back in the hospital, was I got second-degree burns from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head across my entire body without a fire. My my skin felt like knives and needles were coming from my bones through my skin across my entire body 24 hours a day for 38 weeks in a row. One of the medications they put me on, a new medication, was poisoning my organs. We couldn't figure out what was the problem. We thought it was food. We thought it was the pills. We thought it was both. And then they took me off all medications simultaneously. Medication I'd been on for the better part of 20 years, okay, in some way, shape, or form. Very powerful, fast-acting medication that if you remove from your system in one day, one 24-hour period, you have a complete withdrawal-based psychosis. And I saw the answers to the universe during this psychosis. I mean, I'm telling you, I saw things you couldn't possibly imagine. I saw Jesus come off the cross and talk to me. I saw the King of Bhutan, Gandhi, the Buddha, and the Dalai Lama give me their best advice. I saw three aliens, a green, a white, and a gray, tell me where we all came from. And then the Aboriginals tell me that they brought the aliens in the first place. I mean, it was absolutely mind-bending. And then I saw an aurora borealis in my room for the next, the last 24 hours of the 48-hour period. And I say this to tell you that your brain is that powerful. Your brain is that powerful. And during this period of struggle, I was experiencing something I thought was a myth. You see in movies where they have these physical hallucinations where someone can act like they'll feel like they're hitting you. And I thought it was just a movie trick. I started having these physical hallucinations where people would beat me up and I would feel it. And then I would wake up wherever I was and go, that didn't really just happen. That was all in my head. And people don't comprehend how serious and powerful your brain can be when it is sick. And so, it's been a long and arduous struggle with this diagnosis, but I'm glad to say I'm in a place where I am not going to go off my meds uncontrolled and just willy-nilly and not take them anymore like I've done before in the past. I'm going to take my medications, which help me. They don't help everyone. I found the ones that help me, like I say in the Art of Wellness. I'm going to educate myself every day on bipolar disorder, the newest findings. I'm going to know them so I can find the newest treatments that are the most reputable and proven, so I can add them into my program. I am going to be on top of my game when it comes to my own diagnosis so that whenever there's an issue, I can pivot and move forward. No more steps back, pivot and move forward. And that's really, the state of mind I keep so that I can stay stable. Do we have any more? Do we have any more questions?
Yes, just a few more. Pete, someone has come back from deployment and no one understands what they've been through, but they're afraid to ask for help. They're afraid of hurting their career or losing their security clearance. Has there been any improvement on that end? I know in the video with Kevin, it really sounded like a big issue.
So to someone who has deployed, who has a clearance, works at the agency today, I can tell you that that's something that even I, early on in my military career, was always concerned about, the perception of me mentally not being prepared or for the military. And so I'll say this: yes, there has been improvements, and the military is now much more open to folks who have these mental illnesses. Unlike before, you really did. It was like, don't ask, don't tell, right? Don't talk about it, just be done with it. But there was a sergeant major, and hopefully this answers that question, who had once said to me that, if I have an and I hate to use weapons, but this is the military sort of veterans panel here. He said, if I send this, for those that don't know, if he sends a military weapon like an M16 into combat without the firing pin, and if you don't know, the firing pin is literally a very small, like this pin here, and you can open this up. I guess I can't open this. Oh, there it is. It's coming open. And it literally is like a small little pin, literally just like this. And the weapon, if you don't have this firing pin in there, it will not fire. It will never initiate the chain reaction that sends a round downrange, which means if you're in combat and you don't have a weapon, you're pretty much combat ineffective, right? Because you're just a target at that point. So he said if he intentionally sent a weapon downrange without a firing pin, then he was not doing his job in making sure that the mission or the service was ready and effective for whatever mission that they were going to be trying to tackle. He said the same thing is true about humans. So while I can physically see this firing pin for those issues that service members are suffering from, that you can't see, because you can't see that if you have an M16, you can't see this. It's like buried in the weapon. And there are issues that veterans suffer from, who may be deploying, or maybe they're going through some trauma at their home for a variety of different reasons. And like them, they're missing that firing pin, which means they won't be effective when it comes to either their job or the mission that they're being deployed for. And so he would be doing the military a disservice if he sent that service member forward, knowing that they were missing a firing pin. So in today's sort of climate, certainly in the units that I'm associated with, we are all about trying to make sure veterans and or service member get the help they needed. We teach this thing called UMAPIT. It's called like UMAPIT, but Uniform Military something AP. I can't even remember the acronym now, but it has this sort of this stoplight chart where it's like green, yellow, orange, and red, and and part of it is trying to teach leaders how to understand when someone goes from green to one of those other colors, right? Red is they're talking about suicide ideation. Maybe they were a double amputee or something like that. It's causing them severe pain, and you really want to interject and get them the help that they need right away. And so when I was in TBS, and I'm trying to be fast because this is like long-winded. When I broke my ankle at OCS, I went from green to like probably certainly yellow, but maybe orange, because I was incapacitated for several months. I had a cast and everything else. But emotionally, it was worse than the pain, because I spent my whole life trying to get to this point where I finished my degree and I wanted to get commissioned. And all of a sudden now I can't even carry my tray like in the chow hall. I went from a guy who could run 300 PFTs to an individual that can't even carry his tray. So emotionally, I was out of place, and I went from green to yellow. So someone who knew me, I was literally crying in my bed at night at OCS. They bring me back from Bethesda with the surgery, because I knew that they were going to send me home, just like emotionally jacked up, because I knew that something I had worked my whole life for was gone. It was going to be gone. And so I would say to that person who had the question about, yes, you can recover from it. I went to that orange state, green, yellow, orange, red, from that orange state back to yellow, back to green, and now I'm effective. Now the military can use me. Now I can be a voice for veterans who are suffering from either emotional issues or whatever physical limitations that they may have on them, and say, yes, you can be a value added back to your unit and back to your community. So don't think that this temporary situation that you're in is going to stop you from being the best version of yourself.
Thank you. Another question, this one is for Kevin. This was sent privately. What was the hardest thing about recovering from your attempt?
You know, I'm still recovering. I'm in recovery today. But the hardest thing initially was the pain it caused other people. To be fair, it was the pain it caused those around me. Hundreds of people I hadn't talked to in 7 years wrote me and said, why didn't you call me? I would have been there. That was the hardest part. Not recognizing my true value and that everyone loved me. You know, the other hardest part was the physical injury was terrible. I shattered my T12, L2, and L1 lower vertebrae. I missed severing my spinal cord by 2 millimeters. That surgery was a nightmare, and recovering from it was a nightmare. But a lesson learned.
Thank you. One final question, and this would be for both of you. How would somebody know, like how would somebody know when it is time to ask for the help?
I'll go for it, Pete, if that's okay.
Yeah, you're a professional.
Feel free to answer afterwards. You know, here's the thing. A lot of us wonder when we should ask those questions, fearing the questions themselves. The questions that must be asked to someone who you think is suicidal are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? And do you have the means? Those three questions. If all three of those answers are yes, it's time to get them to a physically safe place from themselves, however, by any means necessary. But we fear asking that question because we fear the word suicide. We fear saying killing yourself. We fear that it will spark something in someone who's not already thinking it. That's a myth. Asking someone if they're thinking of killing themselves won't put the thought in their mind if it's not already there. It will instead give them permission to speak on their pain, and a pain shared becomes a pain halved. And so helping someone, to answer your question, when do you ask that question? All the time. You ask it to anyone who you think is going through a hard time, but you don't just ask them, you ask your strong friends. Ask your tough friends and your friends that don't show emotion if they've ever thought of killing themselves, or if they've ever made plans to take their life, or if they have the means. Because you would much rather ask a question that offends someone than them be gone forever and you didn't ask the question at all.
Thank you.
Wow, that's you know, in the military, you know, one of the things we try to teach is you know, knowing your service members here, your subordinates, because if you know them, then you know when their environment, just I was alluding to with that green state. If you know, I drink like 2 to 3 gallons of milk a week. That's probably unhealthy. I don't know why. I love milk. I love cookies too. So, but you know, I like Kevin. I don't even drink. Actually, Kevin, literally, the last time I drank alcohol was December 31st, 1999. It was Y2K. We thought that that all the planes were going to crash and the world was going to come down because the clock was going to strike midnight, and somebody had a wine cooler, and so they gave me the wine cooler. And so I thought the world was going to end. So I'm like, hell, I may as well go out in a blaze, right? And so, so it's funny that you don't drink because I don't drink either. So, but if one of my friends saw me in a bar and they saw me drinking, well, damn it, there's a sign, right? It's like, just like your father knew something in you, he felt differently that day. Yeah. Those who are close to you, while they like you said, they can't be afraid to ask. And if someone saw me in the bar with a glass of whiskey or some shot, well, Pete doesn't drink. He hasn't had alcohol in 21 years, right?
Pete, what's wrong? You know,
it's different. What's wrong, Pete?
Yeah, come on.
Your family situation, because that's the stepping stones to something that leads to something more progressive, where they start to think about ending their life. And so that's when you want to interject. The moment they show signs of their environment around him. Now, if I had saw Kevin on the bus and he was like, you know, bawling and crying, like we as a society, like he mentioned, can't be afraid to be like, hey, brother, you okay? You want to go get something to drink? You want to go grab not alcohol, but you want to go grab like a soda or something like that? Like I probably would have done that, knowing who I am, if I saw Kevin on that bus. So we as a society can't see somebody who's suffering literally visibly in front of us and not be willing to do something about it, because we all are just interconnected. And so, like he said, you can't be afraid to ask and you can't be afraid to step in.
Thank you. So that wraps up the questions. So I'm going to hand it back over to Kathy. Thank you all very much.
I'll just ask Pete and Kevin if you have any final words before we close it.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, I'm just excited to have this opportunity. I didn't know, I heard of Kevin's story before, but it kind of like, you know, went in the back of the ether. And so now I have this opportunity to sort of just be on this panel with him. I'm like, oh my God, I know somebody famous, right? And so I can't get his autograph right now, but I'm just excited that he chose to, he is choosing to continue to add value to this world, because like someone mentioned this earlier, there are people in this world who has been where he's been, and he can share with them the insight and the discoveries and the frustrations and the heartache and the pain of everything else that goes with being Kevin Hines, right? He can share that, because it'll make a difference in their life, just like it made a difference in my life growing up in poverty with someone who had interceded when I had got arrested, and they were like, hey, and that person wound up being like a mentor to me, and I believed in them. And so his story matters, and it should be shared everywhere because there are people who need to see him and need to know that they can go through it and grow through it. And so I'm just grateful to be a part of this process and here to share my experience today with you all.
Thank you, Pete. You know, you sharing your story as well has been equally valuable. So we greatly appreciate you and your service to this country and the globe at large as a Marine and as an individual trying to help the cause. Kathy, thank you for having me again. Everyone Dana, good to see you again. Katie, I know you're there. Great to be a part of this with all of you. To everyone involved, thank you so much. Once again, I think this is a great session. I'm grateful to be a part of it. It means the world to me to be able to try to reach as many people as we can through this pandemic. Everyone's going stir crazy, and I hate to use that term for lack of a better word. We need to be there for one another, and we need to be there for ourselves. And we need to remember that whatever we're going through, whatever we've been through, we can survive that pain to be here tomorrow and every day after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. You guys just make me want to smile, both of you. Pete and I just became fast friends, and I'm gonna make him volunteer for something. I got a feeling. But if you guys like this, I would invite you back for our final installment of this video series on June the 10th, and we're going to talk about a very important topic, and that's our guys in our life. It's the men, and Pete's going to come back. It's going to be the Pete and Kevin show 2.0. So, you know, we get to talk about some more fun things and some very important topics, you know, and we're going to get into what we can do to help our guys, to help our kids. And, you know, Pete has some great tips about that we talked about today even, and goodness knows you've heard Kevin's story, and he's got some things to say about that topic for sure. So I hope that you all spread the word and you come back and see these two amazing guys, and we just thank you. We thank you both.
Thanks, everybody.